Test 1, 2, 3.
And ex officio, Ms. Ginsburg will be joining us shortly. Staff participating in the meeting include Chief Executive Officer Santos Crayman, Deputy CEO Luis Lugo, Assistant Executive Officer JJ Popovich and Laura Guglielmo, CIO John Grable, Chief Auditor Executive Richard Bendel, Chief Counsel Stephen Rice, Senior Staff Counsel Allison Barrett. Internal audit staff include Leisha Collins, Christina Logan, Nathan Amick, Gabriel Tafoya, George Lundy, and Christina Sun. Audit Committee Consultant Larry Jensen. Trustees, please use the raise your hand Zoom option to be placed in the queue. At this time, we ask that all meeting participants to mute their mics until you are ready to speak, and now we may proceed with the agenda.
Okay, thank you. So we have the March and June meeting minutes. Do open up for discussion, or does somebody have moved to approve? Motion?
I move. I second.
Thank you.
Under roll call, Mr. Moore? No, he's not here. Apologize. Mr. Razzo?
Aye.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Ms. Mee?
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg? Not here. Chair Martin?
Here.
The motion passes unanimous by all trustees present. June 20th, they were both combined. Okay. Roll call for the second one. Okay. There's no public comment at this time.
Okay. All right, we're going to move to non-consent items, and we're going to move the agenda item regarding training to the top, and then we'll finish the rest of the agenda. Is that okay? All right, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jensen, or sorry, Mr. Bendel.
Good morning, Madam Chair and trustees. I'm going to defer my comments to Mr. Lugo, who's going to preface the discussion today.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Richard. And good morning, Chair Martin. Good morning, Audit Committee members. We're pleased to present an educational walkthrough of updates to the current Audit Committee Charter, as well as the new Ethics and Compliance Charter. The report and corresponding non-consent items is the culmination of a thorough and collaborative process between internal audit, legal, and various business partners. Richard will delve into the transition of the current Audit Committee Charter to the newly envisioned Audit, Compliance, Risk, and Ethics Committee Charter, short for ACRE. Additionally, Steve will explore the Ethics and Compliance Charter, and both will delineate the roles and responsibilities outlined in both charters. It's important to note that while Steve and Richard will focus on the report item A, the corresponding non-consent items A through D will be addressed separately by staff at the conclusion of this presentation. The charters are not merely procedural, but are deeply rooted in LACERA's core values and mission. The transformation of the new ACRE Charter reflects our unwavering commitment to transparency, accountability, and ethical conduct. It signifies our dedication to fostering a culture of compliance and ethics at every level of the organization. The proposed 2024 ACRE and the new Ethics and Compliance Charter represent a cross-functional collaborative effort, embodying our strategic priority to build a strong, transparent, and accountable organizational governance structure. The enhanced role of the committee, its expanded oversight responsibilities, reflects industry best practices that ensures not only compliance with laws, regulations, policies, and procedures, but also upholds yours and our fiduciary duties with the utmost integrity. The approval of the non-consent items associated with these charters will mark a significant milestone for LACERA and cement our commitment to a governance structure that is not only compliant, but also reflective of our core values and mission. We appreciate the continued support and trust, and I'll now pass it to Richard to start the presentation. Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Lugo, for providing that context for both this training and the discussion that will ensue on the proposed ACRE Charter, Internal Audit Charter, and the Ethics and Compliance Charter and Work Plan. And that certainly sets a tone at the top from the Executive Office, which is really important to this endeavor, as well as the tone that's set by the boards. As indicated in the cover memo, our plan is to hold a dedicated training meeting in February of 2025 to provide training in a number of areas relevant to the committee following the selection of the ACRE. I'm going to use the term ACRE. That's maybe presumptuous, but I'm going to use the term ACRE for just so we don't keep going back and forth between ACRE and Audit Committee by the boards in January. After the ACRE committee is seated in January, we'll hold a special training session to cover a number of different areas. But this training today covers the charters that are being presented for approval today. So it's very relevant and pertinent to our discussion today. The first section of the training relates to the ACRE charter itself. And this charter is in essence the contract between the board and the ACRE committee and will be approved by the boards. Your mandate and authority is provided by the boards to the committee in this charter, and it includes your roles and responsibilities. I will cover the introductory slides and those related to the committee's oversight of audit and advisory activities, both internal and external audit. Mr. Rice will cover those related to the committee's oversight of ethics and compliance activities. And then I will cover the second section of the training, which relates to the internal audit charter. And Mr. Rice will then finish up with the third and last section of the Ethics and Compliance Charter, on the Ethics and Compliance Charter. A little history on the Audit Committee, and I went back to using Audit Committee. I guess historically, it's the Audit Committee. The Audit Committee was established in 2003 following the Enron debacle and adoption of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act at that time. Like LACERA, many other public pension plans established audit committees around that time. And prior to the establishment of the Audit Committee, internal audit reported, and I would say somewhat loosely, to the Operations Oversight Committee and directly to the boards, but we didn't have the strong independent reporting structure that we have now, which is so important. The committee's charter has been a living document that has been evolving since the inception of the Audit Committee in 2003, and it'll continue to evolve in the future. I think I can speak for the team here this morning, as well as management, that we're very excited about this current evolution, as it is foundational to LACERA continuing to mature in organizational governance. This slide lists, I think, the purpose, responsibilities, and functions of the Audit Committee. Changes on the first three areas of the committee's responsibility, those related to the audit activity, internal audit, professional service provider activity, and financial reporting process. Changes there relate mostly to the new Global Institute of Internal Audit Standards, and you'll hear us talk about that today. The new standards came into effect, they came out this year, but they will go into effect on January 1st of 2025. In addition, the following three areas, ethics and compliance, enterprise risk management, and organizational government are additions to this ACRE charter that we're going to be going through with you later this morning. There's somewhat of a placeholder for enterprise risk management, as we aren't quite as far along as the compliance. We're in the beginning processes of the enterprise risk management function, so that will be a placeholder for more information to be added in a further evolution of the ACRE charter. The next slide, please. This is the traditional Institute of Internal Auditors 3 lines model of organizational governance. And as it indicates there, it depicts management's role as having the primary responsibility to achieve the organizational objectives, manage the risks, and conduct the business of the organization. The second line roles are also under the direction of management, but those roles assist the first line, assist management in achieving their objectives. And enterprise risk management and ethics and compliance are primary or good examples of second line functions in the context of today's discussion. The third line purposefully depicts as independent the internal audit role, and that is to provide independent and objective assurance and advice on the adequacy and effectiveness of the governance and risk management functions of the organization. The next slide. I'm not going to talk too much about, we've talked about this, so we can skip this one. This one is a slide that depicts the 3 lines model at LACERA. And you can see that a number of different divisions, and some of these divisions provide both first and second line roles, but they have some second line functions beyond that of ethics and compliance. So I won't get into that. I think what's key here is the positioning of the Audit Committee and the strategic importance of the Audit Committee overseeing the second and third line functions. And I think that actually, if you can skip to slide 8. So the principles guiding the ACRE committee, these are integrity, independence and objectivity, competency, and professional standards. These may not match up exactly, but they align with the organization's values. Slide 9. The elements of this slide are key to the effectiveness of the ACRE committee and the governance structure. The committee must have unrestricted access to information necessary to fulfill its oversight, and the cooperation of staff and the effective relationship and communication with the boards and management. Next slide. I think I'm passing it to, the composition of the committee. We can skip this, but I'm going to pass to Mr. Jensen, who's going to talk about this slide.
Thank you. Richard asked me just to take a second and talk about the audit committee responsibilities. And the audit committee plays a very important role in assisting LACERA's boards to fulfill their oversight responsibilities for governance, risk management, and the internal control practices. And this oversight mechanism also serves to provide LACERA's members with confidence about the integrity of the practices and the activities within the organization. And the audit committee performs this role by providing independent oversight. And I think it boils down to two words in my mind, is really accountability and oversight. And so unlike other subcommittees of the board, which is typically focused on a single topic, the audit committee has a view and responsibility for oversight of the entire organization and holding management accountable for ensuring that proper risk management processes are in place. And our role is understanding those processes. And oversight is kind of a funny word because it means it's the action of overseeing. But unfortunately, it also means that you might unintentionally miss something. And so we have these mechanisms for independence, such as the internal auditor and the external auditor, that provide us with assurances and opinions that everything is functioning as intended. And so our responsibility is to ensure that we ask the right questions and keep asking those questions and ensure that we get the right answers from multiple sources. Then we can feel more comfortable as a committee. And we perform this with the same level of fiduciary responsibility that you have if you were sitting on the board or the board of retirement. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. Those great words. Thank you. Appreciate it. The next slide, this slide and the next few slides highlight the roles and responsibilities of the ACRE committee over the audit functions, again, internal and external auditors. The three sections of oversight of audit activities can, if you're following along in your charter, can be found on page 5, 6, and 7 of the ACRE charter, and include oversight of the of the three that I just mentioned. So we can go to the next slide. The global IIA standards contain a number of essential conditions that need to be met to ensure both an effective program and compliance with the global internal audit standards. This slide depicts, in the bolded words there, some of the essential conditions that the ACRE committee needs to consider in their oversight of the internal audit activity. So ensuring the independence, which Mr. Jensen just referred to, access to the audit committee, that the chief audit executive has unrestricted access to the committee, that you approve the annual internal, or not the, you approve the internal audit charter and the annual risk-based audit plan, that you monitor the internal audit activities performance. And one of the new elements of the standards is the development of an internal audit strategic plan, or we call it a 3-year roadmap, and the approval of the committee. I'll be bringing that back to the committee for approval, hopefully by the end of this fiscal year. One of the important things in and requirements of me, the chief audit executive, is ensuring that I run the office with quality in place. So we have an ongoing quality assurance and improvement program. Every every 5 years, we have an external quality assessment, and that's having somebody independent come in and essentially do an audit of internal audit. The committee is responsible for ensuring that we have the available resources. And every March, we come to the committee with a request for our budget and staffing and service supply budget to have the necessary resources to employ the internal auditors and hire external firms as well. And then you evaluate the chief audit executive, my performance, and are responsible for the hiring and dismissal of the chief audit executive. Hopefully just the latter in my case, or the first, whatever that is. The next slide. Am I on the correct slide here? I think we covered all this already. Let's maybe skip this slide. Independent oversight, performance of the work, audit results. Can you skip to the next
These are your
slide?
professional service providers, the external.
Okay, I'm going to pass on those slides. I'll pass it on to Mr. Rice to talk about the ethics and compliance program.
Thanks, Richard, and good morning, Chair Martin and trustees. In addition to its audit responsibilities, the ACRE committee, if the revised committee charter is approved, will have oversight of the new ethics and compliance program and the new enterprise risk management program. I will talk about the committee's responsibilities for ethics and compliance, and we'll go back to Richard for a few words on the enterprise risk management issue. I'm going to dig fairly deep into the ethics and compliance responsibilities because this is brand new for you, and we do plan to get right to work if the charters are approved today. So want to take the time to really familiarize yourself with your responsibilities and some of the ways of thinking about ethics and compliance. Ethics and compliance is part of management, unlike internal audit, which is independent of management. And this is a distinction which Richard mentioned. I'm mentioning it again, and it's a very important distinction to keep in mind. So we'll probably repeat it periodically to keep that bright line. It really is a pretty bright line in mind. The Ethics and Compliance Program will be a dedicated resource to focus on ethics and compliance risks within LACERA's operations. Ethics and compliance does not focus on all risks, it focuses on ethics and compliance risks. The program seeks to foster a culture that recognizes the importance of applying ethical judgment and compliance with laws, regulations, and policies. The program is intended to prevent and detect ethics and compliance violations, prevent and detect. Oversight of ethics and compliance is part of the board's fiduciary duty of prudence and loyalty. And if the charter is approved today, the boards will have delegated significant responsibility for that oversight to this committee. Before getting into the nuts and bolts of the ACRE committee's ethics and compliance responsibilities, I want to address a high-level question that will be helpful in putting the specific responsibilities into context. And that question is, why is an ethics and compliance program important, and why is it important that the committee be involved? The list of organizations that have suffered serious harm to their business and reputation due to ethics and compliance failures is long, and many are well known. Enron, Silicon Valley Bank, just in the past couple of years, Boeing, as we speak, Volkswagen, Southwest Airlines, City of Bell, going back a few years, was a major ethics and compliance failure. Orange County, going back even a little bit further. And every year the list grows longer and longer. And over the years, it has included a few public pension systems. Some of these organizations, such as the City of Bell, really lacked a meaningful ethics and compliance program. Others, such as Boeing, had what appeared on paper and even was recognized to be a strong program, but still it didn't work. Some of these programs focused on compliance, but they neglected the ethics component, the do the right thing component of a culture of ethics and compliance. Both ethics and compliance are necessary. An effective ethics and compliance program involves strong processes and creation of a culture that recognizes ethics and compliance as core values. In preparing to perform its responsibilities for LACERA's ethics and compliance program, it's helpful to understand why programs succeed and why programs fail. The experience of other organizations can inform this committee's oversight of LACERA's new program. For example, programs succeed when leaders provide meaningful oversight and lead by example. Programs struggle when the engagement of leadership and the tone at the top fall short. This is probably the most important element of success, is this shorthand tone at the top, but it really means meaningful oversight and engagement by the committee and also the boards in ethics and compliance and in the program. Programs succeed when they are thoughtful in their ethics and compliance risk assessment protocols, analysis, and prioritization of the results. Programs succeed when there is alignment between the program and organizational goals and values. A culture of ethics and compliance is a hallmark of successful programs. When ethics and compliance are ingrained in the culture, an organization is more likely to be able to prevent and detect violations. The controls in successful programs are well designed and well communicated through training and staff expectations of accountability. In successful programs, staff feel free and encouraged to report violations without fear of retaliation. In unsuccessful programs, there is that fear of retaliation, which really weakens the potential success of a program. A Harvard Business School study in 2018 looked at the question of program success and failure and found that program failure occurs when organizations are overly consumed by process without the balanced focus on culture and behaviors. Successful programs gauge the success of their programs based on credible evidence of the program's activities and positive culture and behavioral change. LACERA developed its program of ethics and compliance with the lessons of program failure and success in mind. The program is built to meet the best practices described in the U.S. Department of Justice's guidance as to the evaluation and effectiveness of corporate compliance programs, which were developed to assist in the application of U.S. sentencing guidelines for organizations. This is the kind of the foundation of all compliance programs is the sentencing guidelines and the Department of Justice guidance, because the federal government came to a point, and this was probably over 30 years ago now, where they recognized that to incentivize corporations to focus on ethics and compliance and to prevent and detect violations, that it was necessary to incentivize the formation and the serious dedication to those programs by mitigating penalties if an organization had a strong ethics and compliance program. And the DOJ guidance outlines the elements of a strong program. The DOJ guidance also specifically asks whether the board and management prioritize ethics and compliance in their own conduct and in spending time on ethics and compliance risks. So this notion of board involvement comes from the best practice standards in the sentencing guidelines and DOJ guidance. The DOJ guidance further on the same theme of board involvement further asks whether findings are reported to the board and management on a regular basis, and whether the board follows up on ethics and compliance concerns and enforces accountability. These are the reasons the ACRE committee, the boards, and the CEO will jointly oversee the ethics and compliance program with the CEO and this committee really taking the laboring oar. Currently, ethics and compliance responsibilities at LACERA, as shown on that colorful 3 lines diagram that Richard showed earlier, are spread throughout LACERA's organizational chart. We do not have a defined and dedicated resource currently within management that is responsible to interact with staff and report to the ACRE committee, the boards, and the CEO with respect to ethics and compliance issues. This gap will be filled with the new ethics and compliance program, if the revised ACRE charter and the ethics and compliance program charter are approved. So with that kind of long preface, I will turn now to the compliance specific, the committee's specific ethics and compliance responsibilities under the proposed ACRE charter. Using the same analogy that Richard used for audit, the ACRE charter is the committee's agreement with the boards as to the committee's oversight responsibilities for the ethics and compliance. In essence, the ACRE charter approved by the boards, as well as this committee, delegates to this committee primary oversight responsibility for ethics and compliance. If you could go back one slide, Tina, please. Thank you. The ethics and compliance oversight responsibilities can be broken down into 6 areas. The 6 areas are shown here on the slide, and we can go on to slide 17, and we'll spend a little bit of time on those six areas of responsibility. First, the committee is responsible for review and approval of the governing documents for the program, which are the ACRE Committee Charter and the Ethics and Compliance Program Charter. The committee reviews these documents, and we have a pretty frequent review cycle for you for these documents in the early years of the program, because we want to make sure that working together, the committee and staff, we get it right and are in complete alignment. The committee reviews these documents to make sure that the responsibilities of the committee, the boards, management, and program staff are clear, that they're tailored to LACERA specific needs, and that they align with best practices. Sources of best practice are primarily the DOJ guidance and the sentencing guidelines, but also include peer systems in the public pension world, private organizations, and the learning that you can get from your committee consultant, from our LACERA Ethics Compliance Counsel, Rebecca Walker, who is here today and also available to answer questions as the presentation continues, and other resources. Second, the committee is responsible for ensuring that the program has adequate resources. A program can't succeed if it doesn't have adequate resources, and if those resources are not properly deployed. This responsibility includes approval of the program budget, monitoring the adequacy of program staffing levels, and participating in the performance evaluations for the Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer, the CEO, and Chief Counsel. Third, the committee approves the 3-year strategic roadmap for the program and the annual ethics and compliance work plans that will be presented to you. This responsibility gives the committee the ability to oversee, discuss, and help set the direction, priorities, and activities of the program. And we'll begin actually the work under this third prong today with a foundational ethics and compliance work plan that Allison Barrett will discuss with you a little bit later. Fourth, the committee reviews and provides input on the periodic ethics and compliance risk assessments. The committee provides input on the prioritization of risks and efforts to improve controls. Risk assessments are one of the core activities of ethics and compliance. We will survey staff, will really dig deep with staff to identify risks. We'll talk to you about the results of those assessments, prioritize, talk about how our current control environment is addressing those risks, where there are gaps and where we have work to do. Fourth, actually turning on to slide 18. Fifth, the committee will monitor, evaluate, and provide input on ethics and compliance risks on an ongoing basis through frequent staff reporting, and provide input to the ethics and compliance staff, keeping in mind what I talked about earlier in terms of the DOJ's guidance about the level of engagement that the board and committee are expected to have. The way we position you to perform that responsibility is by telling you what's going on, by reporting. And both the ACRE Committee Charter and the Ethics and Compliance Program Charter are very heavy, as you may have noticed, on reporting coming to this committee and also to the boards. And that is just key to getting the information into your hands and facilitating the discussion that we'll want to have with you on an ongoing basis. Every year, the committee will receive reports as described in the charter on a variety of subjects, including policies and procedures, vendor third-party ethics and compliance, risk management, training and communications, investigations, response to investigatory findings and remediation following those findings, privacy, and organizational culture of risk and compliance, to mention a few of the major reports. These reports will be agendized over the course of the entire year's worth of meetings to provide an ongoing opportunity for discussion and direction setting. Sixth, and finally, the committee will receive an annual report on the status and effectiveness of the ethics compliance program, controls, metrics, exceptions to the control standards, and the program's annual self-assessment. This annual program review will provide an opportunity for the committee to give overall oversight, input, and evaluation in the context of a program review, not just in the context of dealing with individual reports or individual program activities. It'll be an overall assessment. So those are the six categories of activities that you will be responsible for going forward. Slide 19, please, Tina. In evaluating corporate ethics and compliance programs, the Department of Justice has established 3 questions that encapsulate their evaluation criteria. And we think it will be helpful for the committee to keep these same questions in mind as you perform your oversight and ask these questions of yourself, but also ask them of staff. The first question is LACERA's ethics and compliance program well designed? The DOJ guidance establishes detailed criteria for a well-designed program, and LACERA's program was carefully designed, in our view, to meet those requirements. But this will be a subject of ongoing committee review and input. And like Richard said, the charter needs to be a living document, and there'll be appropriate changes brought to you, and also, I'm sure, initiated by you as time goes on. The second question that the DOJ posits is LACERA's ethics compliance program adequately resourced and empowered to function effectively? So that includes 2 concepts: adequately resourced and adequately empowered. The board's budgetary and staffing resources are within this committee's responsibilities. The program structure and powers are also part of the committee's responsibilities. So both of those areas are areas of focus under the charter for you to make sure you're answering this question on an ongoing basis. The third and final question is, does LACERA's ethics and compliance program work in practice? Because that's where the rubber meets the road. That's the important thing. Is it actually working? Having a program but not making sure that it works in practice leads us to the situation of Silicon Valley Bank, Boeing, and other programs that fail. So this concept of working in practice is really what it's all about. That's probably the most important question. The first questions prepare the program to work in practice, but that's just the preparation. We have to demonstrate to you that it is working in practice. That will be done through the regular reporting to be provided on all aspects of the program to you, as well as the annual program assessment review and performance reviews of staff that I mentioned. These will assist you in answering this question and in enforcing accountability. A lot of what we're talking about here in these questions is accountability, that the program is generating results. So we present these questions to you as an ongoing touchstone for you to refer to as you monitor and oversee and question the program. Richard, at this point, will now address ERM.
You can see a tremendous amount of work has been put in by Steve and Allison on the ethics and compliance program and the inclusion of a number of pages in your ACRE charter on that. Risk management is strategically is coming under it's a second line function, but internal audit, although we are the third line function with certain safeguards in place, we are charged with implementing this program. We're at the starting line. We will be coming back to the committee with the program charter We have to determine the framework that we're going to use and the structure of ERM. It's not going to be a one-year task to develop the ERM program. So you'll see on page 10 in your ACRE charter right now, there's sort of a placeholder for that. And one of your responsibilities will be to obtain from the CAE an annual report on the implementation and maintenance of an appropriate enterprise risk management process, and then to provide oversight on significant risk exposures and control issues brought to your attention, fraud issues and such brought to your attention by management of the boards. So that's it on ERM right now. And that really ends the training on the ACRE charter itself. We can maybe pause and see if anybody has any questions on the ACRE charter before we move forward into the internal audit charter. There's a lot.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
The three-year plan, I understand in real time there'll be updates, like if something comes from Global IA or whatnot, like what just recently happened at the first of the year. So that'll happen in real time. Just a question on that 3-year roadmap, is that, how do I phrase this? That update report that's going to come annually to the committees and whatnot, obviously change can be implemented in that, but is the 3-year just a set, like a drop dead date that when there's reanalysis of the entire program, if it's working, fixing stuff, is that the purpose of the 3-year roadmap?
The three-year roadmap, I think maybe we're confusing. The ACRE charter is that has a renewal on a periodic basis. I think it's every 2 or 3 years, or if things change, then we come back with the charter changes. The 3-year roadmap refers to internal audits, strategic plan, and that's going to address a number of different areas of just looking out a little further in terms of strategies and things that internal audit wants to develop. One of the things is further developing our CAP program and our continuous audit process program. It's going to include those things. So it's not something that is a point in time. It'll be an ongoing, and the 3-year roadmap will continue to be it extends out. It'll continue to look forward.
Or like projected staffing needs, for example. That would be that within that 3-year. That's more.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
I'm sorry, that's really about performance of the internal audit function within the organization. And so he'll set a strategy, going forward several years about how to enhance the activities within internal audit.
So it's a trigger point, but it's continually rolling.
A rolling 3 years. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it could have an impact on the charter as they have new responsibilities or new functions, activities, different reporting. Yep.
Internally driven changes identified internally, not from a third party, whether the DOJ or Global IA. Gotcha. Thank you.
Go ahead, me.
Thank you, Chair. If you don't mind to go back to the last slide, Mr. Rice's slides. What you share, Mr. Rice, resonate with me a lot, so I think something's important of it to repeat and echo the voice. So I think this ethical compliance is so critical. From my experience of, going through the education program of corporate governance, we learned about 30 cases of failure of corporate boards. And then a lot of cases of failure come from ethics and compliance. And then part of it is from the management side of implementation failing there. The other part, most importantly, is also the board failing to catch it. The board failed oversight. So I'll give you one example. It's happened in our backyard, so maybe you all know. It's the PNG fire. Do you all remember? So that burned down the entire Malibu, right? I was a civil engineer. I go out there, saw the whole fire after disaster, everything's burned out. So that happened because of both management and board fail oversight. So the safety issue was reported many times. Then we'll get to the board. And then this incentive in place that actually promote the wrongdoing. So the incentive is very important in an organization. Do we have the right incentive in place to promote the right doing rather than the wrongdoing? And also culture, right? Culture is so important. Do we have the culture that everyone is held in a high standards? So leaving no room for anyone to justify their wrongdoing, right? So you have to have such a culture environment that no tolerance. So a person that when they committed to a wrongdoing, the human being always have that need to justify their own behavior. Say, oh, you didn't pay me well and I'm going to steal, right? So we need to have that culture, organization culture that leave no room for such a behavior. So I think go back to procedure and policy, very important. We starting from the ground right now, and it's great to set up it right, make a good procedure policy in place. However, perfect procedure policy without, the implementation of enforcement and effective oversight from the board, that's just empty paper. So I think that's very important for us to keep in mind. Our job is very critical here, and it's continually like examination of the process. So just want to share that. And thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Mee. Is this the appropriate time if I have questions about the charters in particular, or are we going to?
So the item that follows will be the actual
Then
going
I'll-
through the charter.
okay,
So
so
maybe that would be
Yeah,
better,
that's when I have
helpful
questions.
when we
Okay.
go through the charter itself.
All right. Any more discussion, questions? Approval to move?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the next phase of the
Oh, sorry.
training, right? I thought you were saying approve and
I
move on. Sorry. I can't wait to share this additional information. I'm
Okay.
very excited. So under the internal audit charter, the CAE and internal audit staff are responsible to carry out the responsibilities of internal audit's activity under the oversight of the ACRE committee. The slides that follow will cover sections of the IA charter. And the first one is the purpose. If we go to the next slide. The purpose of internal audit is to strengthen LACERA's ability to produce, protect, provide the promised benefits to LACERA's members by providing the audit, the ACRE committee, and management with independent, risk-based, and objective assurance and advisory services designed to add value and improve LACERA's operations. And we adopted that from the new IAA standards for the purpose and personalized it to LACERA. So that is the purpose of internal audit. On the next slide, which is the mandate, key on this slide is that internal audit derives its authority from the ACRE committee and its reporting relationship to the committee and the boards. The charter provides for internal audits unrestricted access to organizational data and information, and the importance of the provision of resources, and provides for the importance of the provision of resources to internal audit to accomplish its scope of work. Further, of key importance on the slide is the independence, organizational position, and reporting relationship of the CAE and internal audit. The slides 24 and 25 talk about the my role as chief audit executive and my roles and responsibilities. With consideration to time, I won't go through all of these in detail, but this slide and the next one cover those roles, and they cover areas of ethics and professionalism, my objectivity and independence, managing the internal audit function, communicating with the ACRE committee and executive management, and maintaining a quality assurance and improvement program of the internal audit operations. If we can move to slide 26, the scope of internal audit services. Internal audit provides independent assurance and advisory services to the ACRE committee on the adequacy and effectiveness of governance, risk management, and control processes. The slide goes into further examples of areas of scope, but I won't go into all those in detail. Feel free to ask me any questions if you have any, but the types of internal audit services, just in summary, the types of services are assurance services, and those are the audit services where we perform testing on and provide assurance on the effectiveness of controls. Advisory services, under the old standards that we called those consulting services, they've now changed it to advisory services, but that is essentially consulting on the process, not as much focused on testing. And then value-added services are those services where we are working with management, being careful not to perform management functions, but assisting assisting management in certain areas. And I believe I'm going to be passing it back to Mr. Rice at this point.
Thanks, Richard. Just as the ACRE charter is the board's direction to the committee. The Ethics and Compliance Program charter is the committee's direction to staff as to structure and expectations. Under the program charter, the CECO, the Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer, is responsible to support the committee, the boards, and the CEO in overseeing the program. The charter is intended to follow DOJ guidance for a well-designed, adequately resourced, and empowered and effective ethics and compliance system. The charter covers the purpose of the program, the reporting structure for the program to the committees, boards, and CEO, the activities that the program is charged to perform, measures of accountability, interaction with staff, and other details of the program as suggested in the DOJ guidance. Next slide. The role and responsibilities of the CECO, Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer, are addressed in the proposed charters. The CECO will report functionally to the ACRE committee, the boards, and the CEO. This is a interesting functional reporting relationship, because the CECO will really have three bosses, but that in part is best practice, and in part is what has evolved from our many months of discussion with the board and the JOG-C about the board's vision for this program. And the boards did not want to make a complete delegation to the committee, so they reserve an oversight role for themselves. Although I think it's fair to say that it's secondary to the oversight role, the primary oversight role that this committee will perform. So the CECO has this functional responsibility to support the committee, the boards, and the CEO, all three, in their oversight of the program. The charter, the CECO will report administratively to chief counsel, not functionally, but administratively. The independent functional reporting is as I stated. The CECO will work closely with the CEO and will report to the committee at each of its meetings, and also regularly to both boards. The CECO will be responsible in consultation with and subject to approval by the committee and boards to support the committee, boards, and management with respect to all of the ethics and compliance functions that I described earlier in this training, in an independent, objective, and conflict-free manner. The independence is a little bit different type of independence than the CAE has, but equally important. The CAE's independence is independence from management. The CECO is within management, but even within management, the CECO needs to be empowered to speak truth to power. So the CECO needs to be empowered to inform you, to inform the boards, to inform the CEO of problems in this organization, even though it may be hard to do that. So that's what we mean by the CECO's independence, and it's a critical element for the success of the CECO and the success of the program. The CECO will also perform their work objectively and in a conflict-free manner. And these values for the performance of the CECO's responsibilities are spelled out in the program charter. Next slide, please. To summarize on ethics and compliance, the scope of the program and its activities are intended to provide an independent, objective, and conflict-free structure within LACERA's management, dedicated to the identification, assessment, mitigation, investigation, reporting, and improvement of controls for ethics and compliance risks, and report to and engage in discussions with the committee, boards, and CEO about these categories of organizational risk. The program will also provide a source of accountability that LACERA's operations and the controls embedded in operations support the conduct of our business in an ethical and compliant way. This notion of accountability is another critical aspect. There's a separate section and it's a somewhat long section in the charter focusing on accountability, because we really want to emphasize that from the inception. And that's part of the engagement that the committee needs to have with this program, is the accountability and holding the program accountable, along with the boards and the CEO, but the committee holding the program accountable for their work. And finally, we're talking at a high level here, the program will promote continuous improvement of ethics and compliance, controls and culture, because ethics and compliance is one of these things that's you're never there, you're always working on it. And so this concept of continuous improvement is a core element of the program. For clarity, the program, and I said this at the very, very beginning, but I want to circle back at the end. The program focuses on ethics and compliance risks. It does not address other organizational and business risks, although those risks will likely interact with ethics and compliance, because ethics and compliance really infects everything in it's a positive infection. But ethics and compliance will not really focus on those other organizational business and organizational risks. That's what ERM is for. The program also is not an independent source of assurance as to the adequacy of controls. As Richard already used those words, that's Richard's responsibility and his team's responsibility. Internal audit is independent of management. Again, ethics and compliance is part of management. Next slide, please. Concluding our training with next steps, ethics and compliance, next slide. Yes, thanks. Ethics and compliance will move ahead with proposed foundational activities that Allison will discuss in a later agenda item. These foundational efforts will keep the committee, boards, management, and all staff focused on ethics compliance as the program is being built up. We're hiring a CECO, and we want to set the program up for success through these foundational efforts that Allison will talk about. Enterprise risk management is a future priority to be developed by internal audit in conjunction and partnership with the executive office. These efforts will include development of an ERM framework, a structure, and a charter. At this point, thank you for your patience through this long training. We're happy to answer your questions. Larry is also available and was actively engaged with this presentation, and LACERA's Ethics and Compliance Counsel, Rebecca Walker. She's also here and involved and able to answer questions.
So I'm looking at all this material, and it's pages and pages of, well thought out design to attract or to attack this whole issue of, ethical performance and actions. And what we're really talking about is human characteristics and personal values and personal actions. And the big question is, how do you control all of that? And I don't have the answer. I guess that's what this whole experiment is about, is, what can we do to control, in some manner, how people act in our environment that doesn't bring on the risk that we're talking about, whatever that is associated with our activities. And those ethical issues are societal, and they change over time. What was an ethical problem in 1920 isn't an ethical problem today, because those circumstances and environments don't exist, or even if they do, we've somehow figured out how to change our culture so that those things aren't acceptable anymore. And so I'm looking at this as somewhat of a daunting task, and it's going to be very interesting when we continue to go through this process of identifying and defining what we think are ethical issues that have to be addressed, the ethical issues that have evolved and is continuing or are continuing to change, and then how we identify practices, process, training, even what kind of people are we going to be recruiting into our organization that appear to have the kind of values that we want to bring into our organization? And, how do we identify that? What kind of questions will we ask in our employment applications to kind of ferret out people that we don't want to have here, to, keep it simple. And it takes me back all the way to graduate school 50 years ago. And I had a foundational class that addressed your philosophy of public administration. So everyone, this is our professor's, last concept that he put into us, is that as a public administrator, you are sitting in that space between the politicians and the people. And so how you act in that environment is going to be a function of you deciding on your own what your role is going to be. In other words, developing your own personal philosophy of public administration. And so we want to try to get at, in our environment, people who have thought out what their role is and how to effectively, exercise their role in our environment for the positive outcomes that we're all looking for. So there's a lot of philosophical positioning involved in this ethics compliance process. And I hope we are able to incorporate that into whatever we do.
Trustee Martin, may I? So Trustee Moore, very much appreciate on behalf of the team, your focus on ethics. We do believe ethics is first because of exactly what you say, is we're dealing with preventing and detecting substandard, improper, perhaps even illegal human behavior. And it is a challenge. We recognize the challenge, and we think the organization is ready to take it on. It does take organizational maturity to be successful in this task. It's going to be a bit of a road, and we need to instill that maturity, that focus, the ethics concept into it throughout the organization. And so I just wanted to really strongly echo the emphasis you had on ethics and human behavior, and we agree, and that we really think that is without that, compliance is we can have all the rules we want, but if we don't have the people who can apply them in the right way, because ethics is doing the right thing basically, then the policies won't be successful, because people can always find a way around things, or they can interpret things in a way that's convenient in the moment. And we want to avoid that. So thank you for defining again the challenge for us. We recognize it.
Chair Martin, if I briefly to just follow up on what Steve said, and you highlighted it, I think committee consultant Larry highlighted it as well, culture. And that's a focus of ours. It's been a focus of ours with our new core values and our mission. And I think instituting our culture that defines our behaviors and actions and attitudes, I think it starts at the recruitment process and all the way through onboarding and while an individual's a LACERA employee. So I think that's a focus. I know that's a focus for us throughout the organization. Everyone that has a LACERA ID number has that focus in terms of their expectations, the behaviors that they're expected to exhibit day in and day out to complement some of the things that we're trying to achieve.
And I'll just say, I agree. I was going to say the same thing. Culture is key, and the tone at the top. Culture has come from the board down, and that tone at the top and the culture is critical. And along with all the other things you talked about, the training and the hiring and everything else.
I'll add a really quick comment. This is great discussion. I definitely agree. Values what determine people's behavior. And then I think LACERA's value need to be really well communicated throughout the entire organization. And then the bottom line of that value is that we are here for members' best interests. not for anyone's personal interest, not for management's interest. We're here for members' best interest only. So I'm thinking that might be the golden rule, so what's the right ethical behavior? Are you acting in the best interest of member or not? Thank you.
Okay, and I have just a quick comment. I think this was great on a lot of levels, and it's going to give us some foundation to move forward. And with that, are we ready to move back to the agenda? No, right? No vote.
Non-consent.
Yeah, now we're moving to non-consent. Correct. Okay.
Good morning, Chair Martin and trustees. As Mr. Lugo introduced the education item and discussed this first non-consent item, just as a reminder, we are requesting for this non-consent item that the committee discuss, review, and then hopefully approve the 2024 ACRE Charter. And then upon approval, recommending forwarding the charter to both boards for their approval and eventual adoption of this ACRE Charter. As discussed in the training, staff is in the process of developing an ethics and compliance program and an enterprise risk management program that's going to align with LACERA's strategic goal of maturing organizational governance. We are proposing that these new programs are going to fall under the Audit Committee's purview, and the Audit Committee will then become the Audit, Compliance, Risk, and Ethics Committee, otherwise known as ACRE. The Audit Committee Charter has been revised to, 1, reflect the committee's enhanced role in the oversight of LACERA's ethics and compliance and enterprise risk management programs, which Allison and Richard are going to discuss shortly. And then 2, the revisions that the audit activity had to the Audit Committee Charter, which I'm going to discuss now. So, okay, we're already on the internal audit activity. In January of 2024, as Richard mentioned, the IIA issued its revised global internal audit standards, which are commonly referred to as just the standards. And then subsequently, they revised their model internal audit charter. And this model internal audit charter now includes a section called board oversight. And that outlines the oversight responsibilities that this committee has for internal audits. These oversight responsibilities reflect what the IIA has determined to be the essential conditions for maintaining an effective internal audit function activity. They include things like ensuring the independence of an internal audit activity, having clear authority, roles, and responsibilities defined, and your oversight of budget and resources. We did find that these responsibilities were already included in our 2021 Audit Committee Charter, but we did update the wording and we aligned it so it was all could be found in one area. And then the second item there is the review and approval of internal audit's 3-year roadmap, which Richard already addressed in the educational item. So next slide, please. So this is going to go over your oversight role over professional service activities. I don't think we discussed it during the educational training piece, but the committee is responsible for overseeing our professional service activities, which include the financial auditor, as well as any other consultants that we engage with. And we are asking for a change in the process when we hire an audit pool vendor. So what we're asking is that if the committee has approved a vendor for inclusion in our audit pool, and the audit pool was established a couple of years ago by the committee, these vendors have already been vetted. The committee would oversee the vendor's compensation in accordance with the policy for purchasing goods and services. So this is the heading to the left in green. However, if internal audit would like to use a vendor that is not part of the audit pool, so they haven't been already vetted by your committee, the process would remain the same and the committee would approve both the appointment and compensation of that vendor. We believe that this change will make it more efficient to use a vendor in the audit pool while still providing adequate oversight. And now I'm going to turn this over to Allison.
Thank you, Christina. Ethics and compliance are management responsibilities, and a dedicated program within management follows best practices for a risk mature organization. The ACRE committee incorporates elements of the ethics and the ACRE committee charter, incorporates elements of the ethics and compliance program charter, which is item 6C on today's agenda. And it enumerates the committee's oversight of the fundamental program activities that are listed on this slide, reviewed by Mr. Rice earlier, and that I will be also going over a bit in a minute. The expansion of the ACRE committee's oversight of ethics and compliance is a major step in an evolution towards a more robust governance structure and raising LACERA standards of excellence even higher. And our next stop will be enterprise risk management. Next slide, please, to you, Richard.
Okay, and that's just back to what I talked about in the training, is that we have a placeholder in the charter, and we'll be coming back to the committee with further developments and report to you annually on those developments. So I think the last slide, if we could go to that, is just asking the committee at this point to adopt the ACRE committee charter. Actually, we're skipping number 2 there, that'll follow in the next presentation, but adopt the ACRE committee charter and forward the charter to the Board of Retirement and Board of Investments for approval.
Okay, anybody open for discussion?
I'll move.
I have a couple of questions. So can I ask those first? I was curious, because we're implementing this ACRE charter. How does that affect what your staffing levels should be? Because it feels like the charter's asking for more. And do you see that you're going to need more resources in the future?
No, well, the charters, as Christina mentioned, the charter didn't change that much in terms of what we were responsible for. Okay. The new standards, we do require some additional elements like development of the roadmap, but that is something, in fact, that we had planned on doing prior to the new standards. So I don't foresee any additional resources by the changes. Mr. Jensen has a comment though.
Yeah, thanks. If I recall at the last committee meeting that we had, you were in the process of hiring some resources now. And I think you mentioned that one of those are going to be dedicated to enterprise risk management, or at least in part.
Right. So that's a good
that'll
point,
help with that new area.
Okay, good.
The charter as the current changes, the enterprise risk management is to be determined. We do hope to use some of the resources that we'll be hiring. As that program develops, we may need additional resources, but not specifically related to the standards changing or the additional of the ACRE charter. But as that program develops, we may need additional resources there.
And the ethics and compliance program will have an ethics and compliance office in legal, so that there will be more bodies, more resources that we'll be needing. Some of that is dependent on the county, and I don't want to give away too much what I'm going to say coming up. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty of that a little bit more.
So what does the timeline look like for the risk management?
We have on the plan to kick it off this year, and that is kind of identifying the framework that we're going to follow. There's the COSO framework, or the International Standards Organization framework. I kind of like that one, but I don't want to. We're looking at that, and then developing a plan, eventually the charter. I'm not sure what order that'll all happen in. The timeline is not a year. It's probably closer to 3 to 5 years to develop a a functioning, well-functioning enterprise risk management function is, I think there's small steps. There's, we'll start doing elements of it, but developing the full program will probably take 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Madam Chair, I was thinking the same thing. I had a question to Richard and staff about the same thing, the staffing, I mean, the performance, you guys knocked it out with coming in, 80%. You get really, what you're doing with existing staff, but that was one of my questions was, it doesn't seem like the internal audit committee is going to, it's a revamping a new nomenclature, but it seems like some of the functions are the same, but with the addition of the ethics side, but that's already been identified with having to hire a CECO, CECO. I'm gonna trademark that phrase now.
I like it. It sounds like pasta. So
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
But yeah, so I mean, you guys' fiscal year performance is you're doing it, but you're still understaffed a little bit, right?
We are. We develop our audit plan to be proportionate to the staffing size. So the plan this year was developed with the understanding that we'd have the additional people on board by mid-year. So I think we're still confident. We're probably going to be close to being able to achieve that. Maybe not exactly. At this point, we're confident that we can achieve the plan. Standards do require that we come back to the committee if we need to change the plan, make modifications to the plan. That could be because we don't have the resources, or it could be because things change in the organization that require us to do additional work. And we would come back to the committee.
And I would never recommend this, but that one thing, the vendor, if necessary, to farm out work. I mean, I would, say first priority should be getting staff, and even potentially overhiring for, future potential retirements and attrition. But that vendor plan with the new process in the ACRE charter, that creates a pathway, if necessary, to accomplish one of the set tasks for the upcoming year. We would have that ability to do.
It facilitates the easier hiring of those vendors. And we certainly use those in areas where we just don't have the internal expertise. Penetration audits, IT audits, sophisticated investment audits, other such audits that we don't have that. So we use them in those areas. But to your point, we could also use them for additional work if we didn't have the resources.
Yeah,
If we had some people.
Following up, Richard, I'm assuming like the rollover for the IT was because we got to do a whole new plan with it too, right? Is that
Sorry,
the rollover for the IT to fiscal year 25? As far as a set task, that have any nexus to the fact that we have a whole new thing now too?
Somewhat. I think it was more just a matter of that we didn't get to it last year resource wise. So but the IT risk assessment,
Yes, sir.
yeah, that is but it's underway right now. So yes.
Excellent.
All right, do I have a motion to,
How about
I
comment?
mean-
go ahead.
I'm glad that we talk about resource because it's our responsibility to make sure this group have adequate resource to make the program successful. So I'm glad to hear that discussion. I have a question about training. So on page 4 of the charter, it mentioned that competency committee members receive formal orientation training on the purpose and before start of the committee. So that one, I think that's great. I'm not sure before this change we already have such orientation training or not, or this is new. For my experience, that in the beginning it's really very hard for me to grasp what this is, what my role is. So I think that orientation training is critical. And then for my learning process, like going through these meeting materials, I realized it. Seeing the deliverables, of the work from the group helped me understand the work really well. So when you do the training, maybe consider showing that as a component. Here's the deliverables of the work from different program. So for this training, my thought is committee members might change every year, right? not just new trustee, but the member might rotate, might change. Is that training intended for every year the new one joining the committee, or is it as a group?
So it's going to be open to all trustees. I don't know that necessarily all trustees will want to come to a fun day of internal audit audit committee training, but it is open to all. We do plan to record it and will be provided on an ongoing basis. So in one way or another, whether it's live or sometimes recorded, I think it's important that we do that on an annual basis because of the turnover on the committee.
So this is not a one-on-one orientation meeting training. It's like
It's not a
overall
one-off.
group.
Yeah, we're going to continue. It's going to be continual. It's going to be group and it'll be continuous.
I think it's a more effective use of resource. I know you don't have a lot of staff, and then it would take a lot of time to train if individually one by one. But thank you.
Yes.
Just one small comment to add on your question, Trustee Mee. I think there will be group training, but just as we currently have one-on-one orientations before new trustees take office, it might be helpful for new audit committee members to have maybe some sort of one-on-one orientation. In addition to the group training, especially before their first meeting, to kind of let them get going quickly.
Thank you. All right, so I'm looking for a motion to do two things. To approve the ARC charter and to recommend that we forward the charter to the BOI and BOR to adopt it or approve it and adopt it.
Oh.
So we're good? Okay.
Second.
Thank you. All right.
Mr. Green made the first motion. Mr. Moore seconded. Do you vote? Yeah. Oh, okay. Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Mr. Rozzo?
Aye.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Ms. Mee?
Aye.
And Chair Martin?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
So we now move to our second item.
Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
just may, I can wait till the second.
Okay. So the second item is update internal audit charter. We do not have a presentation. Am I correct on that? So does anybody, I'm opening up for discussion.
I move to adopt it.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Yes. Trying to find it.
Do you want me to ask mine while you're waiting?
You go first,
Okay.
please.
I'm gonna go to the 3 years. One thing I was wondering, when I read it is, why didn't we include the 3 years? And you'd have to go to the slide deck to, you know what I'm talking about? The chart that you had?
Why didn't we include it?
I don't know what's. Do you have your presentation for this?
We don't have a presentation
But
for this.
I
Ms.
read in my document. So what did I read?
That
memo?
It's a 3-year revision that we review it and revise it at least every 3 years. But if something
Correct.
comes up, if there's changes in the standards, we would do that in year 2. I mean, we would make the changes. So it's as necessary, but at least every 3 years that
Okay,
it's revised and updated.
So if you could check into it, because I don't think that I saw anything that said that we would need to do this on at least every 3 years.
Okay.
I believe at the end, we do say,
So you think it's there?
where would it be? Because I'm pulling up you said it's 3 years? I'm sorry. The internal audit charter is not reviewed every 3 years. It's actually reviewed annually.
Right.
And we bring it to the committee.
So what's
Well-
the DOJ has a guideline on it. 3 year, is it the DOJ that has the 3 year
The
guideline?
DOJ guideline would be for the Ethics and Compliance Committee. The Institute for Internal Auditors requires that we bring the internal audit charter back to the
I just-
committee
I'll
periodically.
take back my question. It's
Um,
okay.
Okay,
Let's move on.
we
Alright.
do have comments just in general, if you want us to go over that, but otherwise, if there's,
I don't have any questions.
okay.
I have a minor question. So on the package, the page is 93. I look at the red line version of the charter. The B advisory service. So I see some changes at the bottom, how the team can report to the board along with the division management. So a compare of the new charter for ethics and compliance. I see ethics and compliance that there's an option for the team to report directly to the board or the committee without the management when the situation is needed. I just wonder for this one internal audit, do we have the need that maybe there's some situation or urgency that you may want to report to either the committee or board directly without going through management? Is there any need for that?
I think.
I-
What's that?
I believe that for advisory services, if there is a material deficiency, we would report it to the committee. I mean, at least for advisory services, unless there was an investigation, it was investigative, we would probably want to report it back to management as well, just so they can make that improvement to the controls.
So beyond the advisory service, right, in general reporting, for internal audit, is there any situation, any need that sometimes maybe the team may want to report a committee or the board directly without going through the management? I just want to make sure you have the option if there's a situation that have that need.
Yeah, I mean, I could see, and there could be something, but one of the challenges we have as a public organization is that we have the Brown Act issues to, I do have the ability to talk to the chair of the audit committee and confer with the chair on certain matters. So that would be my route of action, would be to talk to the chair and consult with the chair and move forward from there. I think we are a little bit limited by the Brown Act when it comes to reporting to the committee outside of, I'd have to call a meeting and then we'd have a quorum issue and a public, it's very difficult to do, to meet with the committee outside of management.
But you do have the direct line that you can communicate with the
Direct
chair.
line to the
and-
chair at least, yeah.
Right, that's great. I just want to make sure you have that complete independency. of
Sure,
your
and to
work
the chairs
freedom.
of the boards as well.
Great, thank you.
Madam Chair, I think I found it on the ACRE charter. I think it's B,
ACRE charter?
responsibilities, 7B,
Mhm.
ethics compliance program activity. If this is what you're referring to, the ACRE committee oversees the LACERA's ethics compliance program and approves its program charter at least every 3 years or is provided in the charter and takes other actions and makes recommendations, reports to the board of retirement and the board of
Perfect.
investment.
Thank
Is
you
that-
very
is that-
much. I was referring to a memo which didn't have it in it, but thank you for pointing that out. I'm good.
But that, we're, okay.
Thank you. Okay, are we at a point where we're ready for a motion?
Mr. Green made the motion.
Another one? Oh, sorry, I missed you. Okay.
Need a second?
I
Sec-
second. Okay, so,
Go ahead.
Mr. Moore?
No, I don't have a question. I seconded if Ms. Mai didn't second.
Yeah, she seconded.
Okay.
Yes,
that's
thank you.
good.
Mr. Moore? Yes.
Oh, aye.
Mr. Raza?
Aye.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Ms. Me?
aye.
Ms. Green, I'm sorry, Chair Martin?
Aye.
And the motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
Okay, we're going to move to the next item, which is.
A quick comment, Madam Chair, if I
Yes,
may.
absolutely.
Just, I want to acknowledge that the delay in this was, there's a lack of quorum and due, so hopefully it didn't burden staff too much. I appreciate your patience and well done. And I hope it wasn't too late. I hope that, I just want to acknowledge that.
Well, thank you for that. We appreciate the extra time to get ready for the
Exactly.
presentation.
Exactly. We got to do more work.
I didn't want to say it.
Okay, now we've moved to ethics and compliance program charter. I'm going to open up the floor. Anybody have questions, discussion?
We don't have a slide deck, but we do have some words, if you wouldn't mind us delivering them.
Absolutely.
Enthusiastic words, I might say. As I've been sitting here, I realized a year ago, I received a phone call from Mr. Rice on a Friday, and that changed the next course or my life for the next year. It was literally a year ago, and he asked me, do you want to work on this charter with me? I said, absolutely, let's go. So here we are before the ACRE committee with the Ethics and Compliance Program Charter. And we're requesting that this committee approve the proposed charter and forward it to the joint boards for final approval. This charter is the governing document through which the committee will hold the Ethics and Compliance Program accountable. It's the contract between the program and the ACRE committee. Ethics and compliance are an inherent part of LACERA's constitutionally mandated fiduciary duties and impact the entire organization and its mission. And that is why the proposed program charter has run the gauntlet through board governance, beginning with the UC back in December of 2023, the BOR in January of 2024, the JOGC in February, the joint boards in April, and now here today with the ACRE committee. With each discerning review, committee and board input were incorporated into the charter, including the most recent red line attached to your materials. All of this bringing us to this pivotal moment in LACERA's history, September 19th, 2024, and our request for this committee to expand its oversight duties to include LACERA's first ever formal ethics and compliance program. The ACRE committee's commitment to this program and its governing document is a critical step towards program implementation and infusing ethics and compliance into LACERA's day-to-day operations and strategic priorities to, number one, advance a culture of ethical and compliant conduct. Number two, optimize LACERA's system of risk mitigation and improvement of controls. And number three, establish a process that supports board and management oversight of LACERA's compliance with laws, policies, procedures, and our code of ethical conduct. LACERA's centralized ethics and compliance program will function as a fundamental part of management and work collaboratively with it. The Chief Ethics and Compliance Officer, the CECO or the CHECO, will oversee an ethics and compliance office located in the legal division. That said, the CECO is without question independent and will report functionally, directly, via solid line, without passing go to the ACRE committee, boards, and the CEO. The CECO will have an administrative reporting relationship with Chief Counsel and a dotted line advisory relationship with LACERA's multi-divisional Ethics and Compliance Committee, which has now been in place since February of 2022. In addition to reporting structure, the program charter outlines the authority for the program, including the United States sentencing and DOJ guidelines. These are the recognized sources for best practices to achieve effective ethics and compliance programs, which when followed may mitigate potential fines in the event of a federal investigation. In that respect, the program serves as a prudent investment against liability. Meanwhile, the bread and butter or the day-to-day operation of the program will proactively prevent, monitor, detect, and respond to ethics and compliance risks by reviewing ethics and compliance related policies and procedures, conducting organization-wide ethics and compliance risk assessments, maintaining LACERA's reporting channels with an unwavering commitment to non-retaliation, and communicating the value of the program to all staff through robust education and training. The program is subject to an annual self-assessment and independent evaluation by internal audit, with which the program will have a separate but complementary relationship in accordance with the IIA's 3 lines model. This synergy between internal audit, ethics and compliance, and coming soon enterprise risk management will elevate LACERA's operations and governance. The ethics and compliance program is the responsibility of everyone at LACERA, and oversight begins with the ACRE committee. So we ask that the committee approve the proposed ethics and compliance program charter and forward it to the boards for final approval. And with that, we will stand for questions.
Recommend approval of the staff recommendation.
I'll second it with a comment, Madam Chair, if I may. Mr. Rice, this is awesome. You know, the revamping, I want to tell staff that I feel heard with your red line inclusion in the report. Thank you so much for that. But Mr. Rice talked about, you know, some historic things and you know, the unintended consequences that we're dealing with, like Pepper, for example, the Bell scandal. That was coffin or nail in the coffin, so to speak. So, you know, these kind of things that have a significant impact. So, you know, the best way to manage risk is to have somewhat of a plan. And, you know, and this is really, the charter is well done, easy to read, and thanks for the work on it. And I think it's prudent that you guys included the you know, footnote links for each governing bot, you know, outside of Cyril and whatnot, you know, the government code, 3 lines model, publications, you know, all those things that, you know, as you insert those into the charter, that I think that, you know, I'm thinking down the road for somebody coming in, it gives them the ability to understand the basis for it too and cover it. So well done on that. Thank you.
A quick comment, if I may, Mr. Chair. So I saw somewhere that we have this baseline survey. Since this is new program, new charter, I like that a lot. I think starting something new is to continue examining it, validate if it's working, right? So having a baseline to compare to is really a good idea. So I think a great start. Looking forward to see how this works and how it can evolve. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a first motion by Mr. Moore, a second motion by Mr. Green. So do a roll call. Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Razzo,
Aye.
Mr. Green,
Aye.
Miss Me,
Aye.
Chair Martin. Aye. The motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
Okay, thank you. We'll move to the next item, which is fiscal year 2024-25 internal audit plan. No, oh, I'm sorry, the program. I knew I was, wait a minute, the president. So D, Ethics and Compliance Program Fund Foundational Work Plan. Open it up for any questions or discussion.
A few words, once again,
Few words.
if you'll permit me, if you're not sick of me yet.
Please proceed.
Madam Chair, trustees, the time is now. We can all agree it's never too soon to be ethical or compliant, and that risk exists irrespective of when our CECO is hired. We cannot leave the front door unlocked until that time. And so once the charter receives final approval by the boards, legal office staff currently leading the Ethics and Compliance Strategic Initiative will oversee this proposed foundational work plan in consultation with the ACRE Committee, the Executive Office, Management, and the Ethics and Compliance Committee. The work plan is intended to set the CECO up for success, enable them to hit the ground running day one. On the flip side, the work plan will jumpstart management and the ACRE Committee's oversight over the Ethics and Compliance program until that time, because risk does not wait. Initial program activity, as you'll see in the memo, includes the CECO and deputy job descriptions and salaries, which are currently being prepared in concert with HR, an education plan, policy management, a baseline ethics and compliance risk assessment throughout the organization, a baseline ethics and compliance cultural survey, and what I am calling, or we are calling, the crown jewel of the program, updating LACERA's Code of Ethical Conduct. First, our education plan includes program leadership, the Ethics and Compliance Committee, management, and the executive team communicating the value and necessity of ethics and compliance at every opportunity so it becomes an inherent part of LACERA's culture. Org-wide communication will include things such as the executive-led monthly brown bag meetings, the Ethics and Compliance Committee members reporting out to their divisions after each and every regularly scheduled Ethics and Compliance Committee meeting, and a dedicated intranet landing page for the program. Program socialization will also include separate orientations tailored to particular roles and responsibilities. So for trustees, separate from executives, management, supervisors, and frontline staff. Policy management includes key members of the Ethics and Compliance Committee currently and diligently inventorying volumes of organization-wide policies and procedures and working with systems to build a homegrown software solution in SharePoint called Compass, LACERA's policy library, which hopefully we will be able to reveal at the December committee meeting. Compass will ensure that LACERA's policies and procedures are at staff's fingertips, guiding them as they perform their day-to-day operations. With our baseline ethics and compliance risk assessments, we will work collaboratively with management and query division leaders through surveys and interviews about ethics and compliance risk profiles and operational gaps to consider what additional controls may be needed. Now, our ethics and compliance cultural survey will establish a baseline for benchmarking the organization's understanding of and adherence to ethics and compliance, where we are now and how far we need to go to reach optimum risk maturity. The program will collaborate on the survey with internal audit, which is noted in their cultural engagement memo, item 7D on today's agenda. And last, but absolutely not least, LACERA's Code of Ethical Conduct, the cornerstone of our program. It's the cornerstone because the code sets expectations and the code serves as an ethical decision-making guide. The code was last reviewed in 2021, so this current review is right on schedule. Updates will include the Ethics and Compliance Program, other applicable strategic initiatives, and LACERA's new vision, values, and guiding principles. We will also include a restatement of core elements such as reporting roles and responsibilities, LACERA's investigative process for misconduct, and ethics and compliance risks specific to LACERA's operations. Additionally, the format of the code will be modernized to improve understanding and accessibility through additional channels and also making it interactive. The code update will be followed by trainings for all, including trustees. So with that, we stand for questions, asking that the committee approve the Ethics and Compliance Program Foundational Work Plan and forward it to the joint boards so we may get to work securing LACERA's house.
Motion to move?
I'll move back. I have a couple questions on the,
Get a second before we.
yes, ma'am.
Second. Thank you.
Couple questions on the plan. I know we're getting into, making sure we're not going to get ourselves in trouble, and all that stuff. But the audit committee also, my understanding, it gives the boards clarity on, not just keeping us out of hot water and meeting our fiduciary responsibility and our legal requirements, but also it gives clarity on how things are operating. So this leads to my question, not as far as, and I guess maybe it's for information for my education, but and this board is on the boards, not this committee, but on boards, we've talked about the need for personnel to do the work. And so when we get to administration, as far as risk-based, the boards want to know, how is HR given the tools to hire and so when we, the follow-up assessment on recruitment and hiring, that seems like it's compartmentalized, right? But then the HR operations, if HR needs tools, but it's shown as risk-based. So I just wondered if you could expand on that, because that being on the boards, I want to know if HR is given the tools to hire to this new program, this ACRE program on the ethics side and whatnot, and if you're going to have a succession plan and whatnot, and again, the audit committee is not to point fingers and say, hey, we're at risk here, but it's also to bring light to and information. So that's my question. I like the plan. I support the stand by the motion and whatnot, but if you could expand on that, I appreciate it.
Yeah, through the chair, and appreciate Trustee Green, your comments. I think we talked about earlier on that in order for the program to be successful, it's got to be resourced adequately. HR has hired, they have increased their talent management capabilities. Now they've embedded an HR liaison within each division that works collaboratively to understand the needs of the division as it relates to, personnel, but also understand the classifications and the unique skills needed to fill those vacancies. So I know Richard and his team has been working collaboratively with his HR liaison. They're actually almost close to posting the vacancy for senior internal auditor.
Well, it's posted, yeah, it was
It's
posted a few days ago, so and we have had a tremendous experience, so I think the additional resources they've acquired there in our experience is great, notwithstanding those, I think you were referring to the next item, which is the audit plan and some of those future audits that we're going to do there, but that'll reflect on issues if they do need additional resources. The audit would identify that.
And not just audit, but or legal, but all divisions of LACERA. And so that risk base, that's my question for analysis of HR's operation. I guess if correct me if I'm wrong, but if HR said, hey, we're bogged down, our operation, we have a plan, we can't implement the plan. Does that trigger the risk base or?
No, so the risk base refers to how we put items on the audit plan, and we are getting into the next item if we want to defer till, if you want to, but I can answer the question.
Yeah, let's defer till we,
Go ahead and answer the question.
right. Well, you want to defer it or go ahead and answer the question. It's fine.
Well, I'll answer the question. Yeah, so I mean, the risk base refers to our experience. HR is one of the top key risks in all organizations right now. The hiring is a key risk, not just in LACERA. So, and based on prior audit work that we did in that area, that we had some issues and findings that we had. So that's why we're doing that follow-up review. And risk-based means that, we have limited resources we can't audit everything all the time. So risk-based refers to internal audits, application of time to that area. And we think that there's a reason to go back and take a look now that they've got the resources, now that things are how is the area operating? Are they operating as efficiently and effectively as they can with their new resources? So it's referring not to the risk. It's not an indication of risk in the division. It's internal audits determination of that being an area that we need to focus on. If that makes sense.
I just wondered what the trigger was. So it's as needed. So that would maybe trigger that.
We do those annual risk assessments, and if they said to us, hey, we're just not getting the risk, and sometimes we hear that from division managers, they feel like they're not getting the resources. That does trigger our discussion and maybe inclusion of an area of operational review within that division. Sure.
And as the department head, you could allocate resources for that determination and information gathering. Yeah.
Right.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So now we're moving on to, so sorry.
Mr. Green made the first motion, Ms. Me second, Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Ms. Durazo,
Sorry, I didn't hear the motion. I stepped out.
It's just a staff recommendation.
Aye.
Mr. Green,
Aye.
Ms. Me,
Aye.
Chair Martin.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
Thank you. Okay, next item we're going to is 6E, which is the internal audit plan. But before Richard starts talking, I have to just commend you for doing a great job. This is the best audit plan I have seen in my entire career, and I've seen a lot of them. So congrats.
That's
and with
kind.
that, I'm going to let you do your presentation.
Do I need to do the presentation? So I'm going to go through this very briefly. I do have slides, and then we'll put the presentation up. But if you can skip to the next slide. This is the standards require that the chief audit executive bring a risk-based audit plan to the committee for approval each year. And of key importance here is, and we'll talk about the risk risk-based development. And the modifications, I think that last comment there is that the standards do require that if there's changes in the organization or events occur, if we need to come back to the committee. So although we're approving it at this point in time, it is a living document and subject to change, and that we'd bring it back to the committee at that time. If we could go to the next slide. We talked a couple of times about the different types of engagements and activities that are included on the plan. I don't need to go over that again, but there's the assurance, the audit work, the advisory, and value added. And I guess I did just go over it again. And then another section of the audit plan is the internal audit operations. This slide, and it's not a great slide, and we really need to redo the slide, but encapsulates the risk assessment process. And in a sense, we come back at the beginning of the year, the first year of the seated audit committee or ACRE committee. At the first meeting, we kick off the risk assessment process, talk to the committee about that, get feedback from the committee on any risks that they have. We also bring a framework of our anticipated final audit plan. We put in those elements of the plan that we know at that point, but we haven't completed our risk assessment yet. So we bring that to the committee and request the resources and have our budget, bring our budget to the committee at that March meeting for approval so that it can be included in the organization's budget process and eventually approved by the board in June of each year. So based on that, we bring that, but we also make a promise to the committee that we'll come back to the June meeting with a final audit plan. Our process for doing that starts after the audit committee meeting with the executive office, developing, we refer to our audit universe document that we maintain. We develop a risk assessment that we send out to all the division managers and have them address a number of questions on risk in their organizations. After we review those, we follow up with meetings as necessary with those division managers. We make any additions to the audit universe that we need to. Then we assess prior audit results, environmental risks, have another discussion with the executive team, and then come back with our draft. We give consideration to the strategic, and I've got slides that talk about that, but we don't even need to go into that. We look at the strategic initiatives within the organization, give consideration to those, give consideration to key risks such as cybersecurity and privacy and human resources and talent management, those kind of risks, make sure that we're addressing key risks in our audit plan as well. So I think we can just skip to putting the audit plan up, and request is that the committee approve our fiscal year 24-25 audit plan.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions here, Richard, for you on this. Is this has been an interesting discussion. There's been a couple of key things here. One is that this is a risk-based plan. So these items in here would be like the key risk for the organization. And then two is it's based on resources. And you mentioned that you're in the process of hiring resources. And so does this plan anticipate the resources that you intend to hire this year, or is it just based on what you have now?
This plan does anticipate the resources we intend to hire this year. We are feeling pretty confident that we can achieve this plan. So there's the possibility. I told them, that would be such an incredible moment if we actually came back to the committee and said, we finished it and we want to add more at the March meeting. But I think that, in reality, if we can achieve this plan with the anticipation of the resources, it does include those resources.
Okay, very, very good. And then I guess it begs the question, because there was some very thoughtful questions earlier about the risk and the level of resources that you have. And so if I were to look at this, and you explained your risk assessment process, so because it's based on available resources, what risk are we not addressing in the organization, and that we perhaps could address if you had additional resources?
Well, I think that, it's kind of like the question of why don't they make the airplane out of the black box? Internal audit can't audit everything all the time. I'm not answering the question well.
No, I agree. And I think from a committee perspective, it's important for us to understand the risks that the organization faces and because it is based upon available resources. In other words, you probably have like a list of risks perhaps. And then, so are there risks that are not being addressed? Because I think it gives us a view of what's acceptable within the organization or not. In other words, you may have some high areas that you're not able to address based on available resources that at the committee may feel is important and want to allocate additional resources, or they may say, great, I think we're covering, our key risks within the organization and we're satisfied with that.
Yeah, I believe we are covering the key risks in the organization. I think in the area of, we have a section of the risk on enterprise risk management. Are we going to be able to address all of that section with the resources that we have? That remains to be determined. I don't believe that there's, I'm just not bringing to mind. I don't know if anybody else on the team has any thoughts on that, but I'm nothing comes to mind that we were in areas that we're not covering.
I have a
That hasn't
suggestion.
had adequate coverage over time. I think it's, I think we're continually looking at those areas, looking to find areas, but nothing comes to mind that I would say we don't have the resources to, and then the plan was short this year. No.
So I guess my suggestion or my question would be, usually you have this big old list of what you want to do, and 75% of it ends up in here. Do you have a list like that? And then there's like the bottom 25% that you're going to wait till next year?
Somewhat. I don't know that we actually put that list together of
Yeah.
those that we consider an ad. We have that audit universe document that we look at, and we're trying to further formalize that, put some sort of cycle on the audits. That's a work in progress.
Right, because that would
but
be
yeah,
what
that
I
is-
would be interested in seeing, like,
Sure.
because you've actually put it down on paper, so there's a
Sure.
reason, and we're not covering it. So what that
Right.
reason is having the comfort level. So if you could,
And that might
bring that
formalize and
back to
better
us.
address Mr. Jensen's question, because his question's good. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't have a really great answer for it, but I think that would be beneficial to be able to show the committee, here's where we cut off, and these are the things that we didn't include this year, but I don't think it's necessarily that you would want to add the resources. I think it may be that we didn't include these, but we have here's why we didn't include the ones that we did, and we're comfortable waiting till next year.
yeah,
I
and
think
so we feel
that's where I feel
comfortable
we
waiting.
are. Yeah.
Okay, and if we get to see that list, then we want that comfort as well, right?
Okay, and we
Yeah.
can do that in future.
Perfect.
Mhm.
And Matt, just for clarification, I mean, this is all really good. But in the audit performance report, I guess, Madam Chair, what you're getting at is like, kind of how are they prioritizing it, right?
Mhm.
Not necessarily in the report, right?
Right.
Okay, gotcha. I mean, still you're batting 800, right? With what you got, and there is, four extensions and two rollovers,
Mhm.
or do I have that flip?
That's right, I
flip-flop?
think so.
But and I have a question on the benefit side that was kicked to fiscal year next year, which is the LA County payroll.
Mhm.
And it says LACERA's lost it. It was E, right? But what is that it's operations, LA County payroll, LACERA controls from assurance and / audit. It rolled over into fiscal year 25. Would you educate me on what that is, if you could?
Yeah, so I think there's a concern about the payroll. Many pension funds, the CalPERS has 3,500 employers, and they go out and they do the employer audits, and they go out and look at the payroll at the audits. They actually specifically go out and do those audits. There's been a desire for internal audit to take a look at the LA County payroll and maybe go to the plan sponsor and look at their payroll system and make sure that they're complying. But we feel that most importantly, we need to understand the controls at LACERA. We get that payroll twice a month that comes in. What controls do we apply to ensure that it's complete and we're getting accurate information, that we've worked the exception reports that come out of that. If there's if contributions don't match up with what we expected, do we have a control in place to say this person earned this much money and they were in this plan, so the contribution should have been $700. If it wasn't $700, why, what's going on? Do we have those controls to make sure, edit checks and controls? And it's really the systems division, benefits division, quality assurance, a number of different divisions. Financial accounting gets the actual money and puts it into the buckets that they need to be in, the employer buckets that they go into, and that needs to tie then to the benefits system as well. And so there's a reconciliation that's done. We're looking at all of that, understanding the controls at LACERA so that we can better understand the audit that we do when we go out to the plan sponsor.
Yeah, and ultimately, if it either reduces an employee's retirement benefit, or increases it, right? I think this is really great because I have a follow-up question, but there is, as an example, there's about hundreds of pay codes that the county payroll system uses, some of which are designated as pinchable income.
Right.
And there's been stuff that has been designated as, say, for like an FLSA settlement that FLSA Fair Labor Standard Act overtime included in an employee schedule is should be pensionable. It's considered pensionable.
Right.
But county payroll put the wrong pay code on it.
Right.
As fiduciaries and LACERA following absolutely what the law says to do, they cannot do a one-off on it because it's miscoded at
right.
And so that I think that's a very important, because again, if our employees or LACERA members do something, and also the check and control in case they're being overpaid also.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, that's really good. I'm glad so that'll be an ongoing thing then, like this. And my follow-up question is what happens when you find that in that deep dive that the county payroll system is not, as the example I gave, like that they have incorrectly coded a pay, for example. What would be the process? Does that go to legal?
Well, I think it depends. So our process is not an ongoing process. We're doing an audit of the controls in place at LACERA to see how we're detecting those kind of things. Are we doing that in real time when that payroll comes in? Are we detecting that? I know that we have additional controls. If it's not detected in the month that the payroll is received, there certainly is. We do a full audit of the file when people retire. So that is the backstop. But we'd prefer to correct things in the month received. If we have processes to make sure that those pay codes are correct, there's a process that all pay codes that are pensionable come to the board for approval. So we do have controls in place that look at what is being presented by the county payroll when they send it over. It's matched up. If they deducted contributions from it, is that a pensionable item? So the goal would be to try to detect that here, and then the process that they go through, we'd be looking into how do they address that, and whether that means going through the legal office or going through the quality assurance division to make those amendments. That's what we still have to find out when we do the audit. We want to look and see that the processes are in place to do that. And
I understand. So it's more of LACERA's identification of it and whatnot. It's not necessarily keeping track of what's coming out of the auditor controller's office for payroll. It's more of an internal audit if our folks are catching it. Or
first want to understand what the controls are here, and then after that we can go back and look at the direction that's given to the auditor controller regarding the payroll and see what they're doing on their end to audit the payroll system. We'd be placing some reliance on the work that's done by the auditor controller's audit unit as well, and talking to them because they do payroll audits as well. But in order to speak to them and understand what our concerns are, we need to do the first phase of the audit, which is the one we're working on this year.
Gotcha. Yeah, and my experience with benefits staff, they are on top of it. If it's coming due to the employee, so this is great. I like the the chance for this to give a deeper dive at,
Mhm.
at the accounting system too, because sometimes that's the root of the problem. So,
Yes, absolutely.
Big shift.
100%, I agree.
Okay,
Thank you.
we ready for motion?
Did you have a question?
Okay, me. Oh, by the way, we have Mr. CEO Santos Kryman has joined us as well. So after you speak, I will open it up to him. Thank you.
Thank you. I realized that, we have performance evaluation this year. I waited because I didn't know how to rate. And now I realize that I think when you have like finding of high risk items, I think you guys doing a great job. When you don't have high risk finding, doesn't necessarily mean that you don't do a great job. Maybe it's our organization is that good, maybe we can look closer. So I see a lot of high risk finding in last year's audit. And then my question is, for the last year, the year before, every time we have finding of items at high risk, do we follow through to make sure the recommendation implemented and the issue are addressed, and then to find make sure it's at a good place? Because my concern is that if we don't follow through, make sure it's properly addressed, those items might still be in high risk item and might still need to be considered in this work plan.
Yes, we do. We follow up and we bring that to the committee. There's a report that in the packet here on the follow up. But that is something that with the committee's involvement, that we've really improved that process and the cooperation and working with management. We're happy to report that most high risk recommendations are implemented in the appropriate time frame. Sometimes there's reasons outside the control of that for whatever reasons, systems that need to be developed or timing wise that there's extensions made. But in the past, we've had findings going out many years. We don't have that anymore. Most findings are implemented within a year of the recommendations being made.
I think it's important to point out also that LACERA does caps. So even though they come back, say a division comes back and says, I've implemented this, and we write it down, they actually go the extra step that they will go in to test to ensure that it's been implemented, which is really, really A+++.
And we do test it even at before we sign off on that high risk
On
recommendation.
top of it. Okay,
We'll do
yeah.
testing at that point to make sure.
Thanks for
But
that.
then we do another follow-up cap audit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be beneficial to add a tab to indicate which are higher risk, medium, low risk? Would that be beneficial?
So
On the
we're talking about
plan.
the follow-up or on the audit findings. So this is the audit plan. So
On the plan.
on the plan,
I mean, because
we don't rate we do, I guess we do. We haven't.
I think the whole key is
We haven't grouped the
that
plan by risk. And it's risk-based, but we don't indicate which ones we consider higher risk audit areas than others. We found in the past that there's a lot of reasons that why we do certain audits. It's this timing reasons and everything else. And then we ended up having the committee say, why are you doing that audit when this other one's higher? We end up spending a lot of time talking about
the key is when there's a finding, then they will put a risk on it. Is it a high, medium? So, once that finding comes, forward, it's a high risk. So they move faster than they would move on a lower medium risk, if I'm right on that. Yeah.
Well, I was just curious to know it, because I'm not familiar with,
Sure.
Which one's high, which one's low, which one's medium. So would it be beneficial to have that indicated prior? So that way, I mean, I'm just asking if it would be beneficial to rate it or to indicate which one is lower risk or high. Would that be beneficial?
That's I know a lot about this area, and it's just, I don't think that it's something that we want to do, because each of these areas are important, and I think that it makes it difficult if we're already putting a tag on it and we haven't gone in and looked at it. What I would think would be helpful, which you're making me think about, is that if these audits had problems in the past, they were high risk in the past, they had high risk findings in the past, maybe that's something we'd want to know about. I think that would be a lot more helpful.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
Ms. Martin, what you said about the priority list, though, that that request for future information, would that not be sufficient? Task and order of priority that you requested, would that fit?
I think what trustee's looking for is she's wanting to know where there's potential risk or weaknesses. And the only place I can think of in the process that would help that would be knowing that these areas had potential high-risk findings in the past.
Were you gonna have did you want Santos?
I
to
would
comment?
love Santos to chime in. I think he's been waiting.
and
Santos,
then I'll-
we're going to give the floor to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and I apologize for not being there in person. My comments actually have to do with the discussions that you had regarding resources. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that we've been working very closely with Mr. Bendel and his team to hire the vacant positions. We did send an exam out for the senior internal auditor for, I'm not sure if it's information systems or there's a couple of areas that he needs to hire on. And then in terms of the discussion, whether or not he has enough staffing or if he has enough resources, I want to make sure that you're aware that there's there's two sides to that particular coin, and the operations side also has to devote significant resources when we're actually implementing the findings. And so the operations side has the task of making sure that we review all of the findings, that we're starting to change the operations so that we close that particular risk. That does take time. It does take resources internally. And then, of course, we assist him with his ongoing audits where we provide staffing and we provide, the information that he needs, access to the systems and so on and so forth. And so I don't want the committee to go away thinking that it's really about just the audit committee and what their resources are. So the plan that Richard has put together, it's something that we have talked about a lot in terms of what we can do on our side and what we think is of major importance in terms of making the operation better in the future. But I just want to make sure that you're aware that it's not just the audit team and what the resources they need. It's also what's available to us. And I think that is a consideration that I'd like you to consider when you're looking at your audit plans. Not saying that we would marshal resources in areas as they come up, and when the findings come after the audits, we do marshal resources pretty quickly with the high risk areas. And so I can tell you that I am proud of my management team and my division managers in terms of them executing on the high risk findings and going through them with the audit team, the internal audit team, to make sure that we're identifying those areas that really need to be shored up. And so that's the only thing that I really wanted to contribute, so that when you look at this particular plan, it's independent. Richard does derive it independently, but he does use input from us in terms of, hey, Richard, I really don't have the staffing to do this at this particular point in time. Maybe we should, do it in a couple of months or 3 months or a year from now or what have you. But that's sort of the interaction that Richard and I have in terms of putting this plan together. So that's all I really wanted to mention. And in terms of the discussion, the last thing I can tell you is that we are definitely going to be focused in on trying to, once we get the internal audit positions done, we have to actually staff up the ethics and compliance office. And so there was a question that I believe Mr. Green had asked about HR and what they're doing, and so we have been working with the CEO's office to identify those particular positions and writing job descriptions and job duties for those. we unfortunately don't have the ability to just implement it and say, these are the positions we need, please approve them. We have to work through the CEO's office until the lawsuit, quite frankly, is completed. But we are focused in. It's really important stuff. I want to commend Steve Rice. Quite frankly, he never let this go. This was probably the very first meeting I had. He talked about this creation of this ethics committee, and so I really appreciate all of his hard work and all of his staff's hard work on this as well. So I just wanted to make sure I chimed in and let you all know that we are focused in on this, and we will resource Mr. Bendel and support him to the best of our abilities. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Kremen. And Mr. Kremen makes a good point about the staff capacity, the organization's capacity for audit work, and something that we need to consider as we establish this ethics and compliance function and the enterprise risk management function. And our standards require that we place reliance on other partners in the organization that are addressing some of the risks. And that will lighten our audit plan as well by looking at what risks are being covered by the ethics and compliance function, by the risk management function, by the quality assurance division within the organization. We need to identify those as well. So just want to make that comment. And I think Mr. Jensen had a comment.
Yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
thank you, Richard. I think in a way you did answer my question, and you provided us with some comfort in that the key risks in the organization are included in the plan. And so I appreciate that. And I'm not sure that we really need, you got 37 items in here. I'm not sure that we need a long list of, items that may not be addressed. Maybe 3 to 5,
Sure.
Just kind of give us a sense of, because if you had an additional resource, that would be all that you would cover anyways. And so and the risk profile changes every year. So it doesn't necessarily mean that those that are included in your list, just because they weren't there, that they will be next year, right?
Sure.
And so I think maybe just let us know, here's 3 areas that, came up in our risk assessment. And as a committee, we may say, oh, okay, that's, acceptable. And I think that, there's different levels of risk assessment to kind of address your question here. And so the auditors will take a deeper dive on each one of these areas and assessing the risk, whether they're high risks. And so their audit will focus on those high risk areas. And so we'll learn that from the findings and the results of the audit. So just with our understanding that these are the key risks that we're facing now.
Okay, so are we ready to move on this motion? Is there a motion to move? Approve?
We need a motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so in the, go ahead.
Okay.
Vote.
First motion, Mr. Moore, Mr. Green second, Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Razzo,
Aye.
Mr. Green,
Aye.
Ms. Me,
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg,
Yes.
Chair Martin.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
Okay, we are now at time check. So it's now 11:15 and we still have 4 more items to get through. 1, 2, 3, 4 more items, just to let you know. So we're on 6F. So there looks like there's a presentation. Can you make it a shortened one?
So this one, I don't know that we necessarily need to go to the presentation. This
Okay.
was the Rehired retiree program that's audited every year for compliance. We found we were fully compliant this year. This is LACERA's Rehired retirees.
Yes.
They came out with the new, Mr. Rice worked with the board and they developed the new post-employment retirement policy in July of 23. Our testing for the 2 years of 23 and 24 identified full compliance. I believe there were 4 Rehired retirees working at LACERA last year. There is 1 this year currently working. So I'm happy to take any questions you may
Questions, yeah.
have.
Okay.
I'll move to accept and file and forward to both boards.
Second?
Second, this is Liz.
Thank you.
Okay. First motion by Mr. Green, second by Ms. Ginsburg, Mr. Moore,
Aye.
Mr. Razzo,
Aye.
Mr. Green,
Aye.
Ms. Me,
I'm so sorry, which item?
the LACERA Rehired retiree,
Oh, got it. Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg, and Chair Martin.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously by all trustees present.
Okay, we're gonna now move to non-consent item 6G. Audit of termination of user access, and I'm going to turn it over to you for.
Now, this was an item that the committee was concerned about and actually requested we add to the audit plan. It was one of those items that actually that we had removed from the audit plan, and the committee asked about it, and we added it back. So in the spirit of the prior discussion, and it is a key risk area, a high risk area that was audited. Mr. Tafoya does have a brief presentation if you wish.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Chair and trustees. This is a key risk area which addresses the importance of maintaining controls over our applications and data. It's critical to disable access upon a user termination or upon divisional transfer of a user, and to have processes in place to work effectively. LACERA does have controls in place to disable user access to applications and the network. However, our testing found exceptions and areas for process improvements, and that's why we give this audit an unsatisfactory. Next slide. The objectives of this audit were to assess the effectiveness of procedures and processes related to the termination of access rights to LACERA's applications and network. Next slide. Slides 4 and 5. The next two slides include all testing for the audit and show controls where we found no exceptions. Next slide. Slides 6 and 7. The next two slides show the 4 high-risk ratings. Management agrees with the findings, which are planned for completion by December 31st, 2024. As you can see, finding 1 relates to outdated policies and procedures. Here we observed that the offboarding procedures, which include the termination of access processes, are outdated and incomplete. Finding 2 relates to inconsistencies in the methods used for offboarding and incomplete or missing documentation supporting network access removal. For example, missing email notifications. Some of the notifications of termination from division managers were missing. ServiceNow snow tickets requesting the termination of access were not created for some. So while individually these exceptions may appear as minor infractions with a minimal risk, collectively they indicate a lack of consistency in the controls and process. Overall, this underscores the need for process improvements and training to reinforce guidelines and requirements. Finding 3 relates to deactivation of user access in a timely manner. Here we reviewed reports and other supporting documentation to assess if deactivation of user access was being performed in a timely manner. And finding 4 relates to monitoring and removal of access rights from non-single sign-on network applications in which the removal of access rights is not performed under the purview of the systems division. Currently, this control is the responsibility of division managers and staff. And also this role has not been clearly documented or communicated to managers. Next slide. We would like to thank the Human Resources, the Systems Division, and the Executive Board Assistants for their cooperation during this engagement.
Thank you.
So are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Okay.
You know, it happens. No organization is perfect. But it looks like the attention is focused on this. My question is, so management is committed to doing this by December 31st. So I want to be a little bit careful. I want to ask you, are you doing a cap, or what? Have you looked at these? Well, you probably haven't yet because they haven't implemented.
So it wouldn't be a cap, it would be a follow-up on those. We'll be meeting with management. Management will let us know what changes they've made. Obviously the policy, the one finding had to do with developing the policy, and that will help to shore up the second finding, which was consistent application of the policy, maintaining of records and such. So we'll be testing those because they'll tell us that they've got it in place and doing it. If it's in place by December 1st, we'll take a look at any terminations during the month. I don't know timing wise to report to the committee. I don't know. Actually, that's done by December 31st. We won't be reporting that to the committee at the December meeting. We'll be reporting it to the committee at the March meeting. But after that, after management reports that it's completed, we'll be reviewing what they've done and testing it, and then reporting back to the committee that we have validated it and or
Yeah.
validated that they haven't done it and extend the date out further.
So here's my concern. I don't know if I personally want to let out a report that says this is going to be done in this kind of area and it's pretty high risk without having some assurance, meaning waiting until management has implemented it and you've tested it and we have some assurance that it's being done. Is it appropriate at that point in time then to share this report?
Well, I mean, in the sense it's shared already, it's a public document
Oh,
at this
okay.
point.
Okay.
So your acceptance of the report is not going to further.
But you
share
could do a
share
report back for us on this particular report, right?
Yeah, we'll report back,
Yeah,
and
let's
part of
do
our
that.
record follow-up will be reporting
Okay.
back.
That's fine with me. Any other questions?
I think the December 31st is a target date, right? Like it's haste makes waste, right? You know, it's not.
Right.
So if all the things come together,
yeah,
but it hits January 20th, we're
yeah
setting a goal for December 31st.
Yeah, and being high risk, I think that demonstrates management commitment. All four of these findings we considered high risk, and they are committed to getting them completed by December 31st. There's no guarantee, but we'll be following up to make sure.
Because I agree with Ms. Martin. You know, like it needs to be thorough and vetted and to ensure
report back
and to ensure success, and then report back.
Thank you.
Sure.
So do we have a motion to move?
I'll move the recommendation.
My second.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore made the motion, Mr. Razzo second. Mr. Moore?
Well, first, I'm going to vote yes, but I want to make sure we get a status report at the very next meeting.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay.
Ms. Razzo?
Aye.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Ms. Mee?
I very much like the conditional aye from Mr. Moore. Aye.
Ms. Grinsberg?
Yes.
And Chair Martin?
I think it's clear we want to report back. Yeah.
So we'll
Thank
provide
you.
the status of the December meeting, although it won't be at the end of the month, but at least let you know where management is on, if they're on track.
Thank you.
So thank you. The next item is also Mr. Tafoya's was an annual review of the CEO's credit card expenses. This one is not high risk. We found that everything was operating effective. He does have a presentation, but this is done every year because Mr. Kryman doesn't have anybody that reviews his card expenses on a monthly basis. So we do this in lieu of that. We do the annual review compliance check, and we found everything to be compliant. So as you wish, we can go through the presentation.
I would like you to, because there's many of us that haven't seen it. So that'd be great.
Mr. Tafoya, if you would continue with your presentation then.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this will be a brief overview of this audit. The main reason that we performed the audit is because of the Chief Executive Officer's corporate credit card expenditures, which are not reviewed and approved by a manager. As a result, Internal Audit has established an annual compliance audit of the CEO's expenditures to ensure compliance with the policy. Next slide. Okay, and next slide, please. This type of engagement performed is classified as assurance. That was previous slide, that's fine. Assurance audits provide objective examination of evidence for the purpose of providing independent assessment to management and the audit committee on governance, risk management, and control processes for LACERA. LACERA maintains a corporate credit card program to facilitate the purchase of items described and permitted within its corporate credit card policy. Cardholders are responsible for ensuring purchases are compliant with the policy. The corporate credit card is kept secure. Required documentation is maintained to substantiate the purchase. Monthly reconciliations are complete and submitted timely, and monthly sign-off of the Bank of America online works. BofA system is complete and submitted timely. The cardholder's manager is responsible for verifying that all charges are legitimate and conform to the policy and approving the charges in the Bank of America Works application. The Financial Accounting Division, FASD, is responsible for administrating the program, including providing a high-level review of expenditures and coding the expenditures to the general ledger. Next slide. We tested 100% of the transactions. There were 71 transactions in the amount of $24,350. All charges were reasonable and conformed to the policy. All documentation adhered to the policy requirements, and there were no exceptions noted or areas identified for improvement. And that's it. We thank the Executive Office and FASD staff for their cooperation and assistance with this audit.
Trustee Me.
I do have a question. If you go back to the last slide, it's not a matter of dollar amount, or just this is not a lot. And I just try to understand, what this include. For example, the hotel, meals, and airfare. I know that for trustee, when we travel, we have dear Linda book it for us, So I wonder if this the same. Is it two credit cards separately? Sometimes it's booked by the assistant, and sometimes it's booked on this separate credit card.
It could be either. I mean, I don't know whether Mr. Kremen does his own bookings or whether somebody assists him with the bookings, but these are the charges on his card. Are you asking if there are other charges, if he had other flights that were
booked differently?
Booked differently in addition to this? I'm not sure. Is Mr. Kremen still on the line?
I can tell you, all of my bookings for travel are done by my assistant, Norma. And so she provides the itineraries and things of that nature and shows me the different flight options, and I just say just this one, and that's how we do it. So, and we use the corporate card to do all of it. I don't book anything with my own card or anything like that.
So this represents all of your travel expenses.
Yeah. Correct.
Thank you. One more minor question. The membership fee is, again, it's not a dollar amount, it's not a lot. I just try to understand, what kind of memberships is used and to support your work.
It's for the state association, calipers. There's a couple of other. What? Say that again.
And CEPAs.
And CEPAs. And so those are the majority of the membership costs.
Got it. Thank you.
And one comment, those are not personal, those are organizational.
That's correct.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Not his membership at the Equinox.
Yeah. I love an LA athletic club.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen.
Okay. Motion to move?
I move.
Second.
Okay. Ms. Me made the motion. Mr. Moore second. Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Ms. Durazo?
Aye.
Mr. Green? Ms. Me?
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg?
Yes.
And Chair Martin?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously by trustees present. Okay, so now we're on non-consent item 6I.
I think we have one more. Oh, sorry, that's the one.
6I.
That's the one you're talking about, the bonus issue.
The bonus issue. So I wanted to make a comment to start with. I know there's no presentation here, but this bonus program audit reminds me of the termination of access audit, but it's at a whole different level. In reading through everything, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this audit was done and management or whoever reported back, we've taken care of the recommendations. Internal audit goes in with what I call your testing.
Right.
I'm not supposed
the
to call it
CAP program.
the CAP program,
right.
and finds out it fails.
Yes.
So that means what management has told us wasn't true.
At the time that there was 2 audits done in the past.
Okay.
One was by the county. The county came in, the auditor controller came in 2019, and that was followed up by an internal audit, I think, in 2021.
Okay.
We had recommendations about the program, the process. The county had recommendations. Many things were implemented. The number of bonuses paid was reduced substantially.
Okay.
So many things were done by management, including the development of a policy. So we went through our process of validating that at that time and signed off on it. However, this CAP test now, 2 years later, looked at how it has that actually, is that policy being complied with? And it was a compliance audit to make sure that, and when we looked at the certification bonuses, they were in compliance. They were following that and making sure people had provided the updated licenses, if you're a CPA in my case, to continue your bonus. But when it came to the additional responsibilities bonuses and the out of class bonuses and the superior subordinate bonuses, they did not have supporting documentation for either continuing the dates of those or they were beyond the re-update. So there were dates back of June 30th of 2023 that had passed and our bonuses are still being paid, or they moved the dates to June of 2024, but they hadn't received evidence or approved supporting documentation for changing the dates. So there was non-compliance there, and management did attribute this to, so in a normal CAP process, we would check off and tell the committee everything's being done right, and we just get a summary. In this case, we bring this audit memorandum to you to say, hey, here's a CAP test that we did, and things aren't working right. And the controls are failing, and management attributed it a lot to the policy and the workflow and the process.
Sure.
And I'm working on a committee with Mr. Rice and Ms. Natoya, and we're looking at the policy itself to see what can be done there. But part of it is just process, and management is, our staff are here to answer any questions. I can address what I can, but I think I believe Ms. Natoya is she here?
Yeah, I can chime in again. Thank you for the clarification. And I know that nothing's perfect. Yeah, I understand that as well. But in my mind, this one I would want to report back on, even if, and I need to open it to discussion to everybody else. This would be one we would want to pay special attention to make sure that it's where it needs to be. I think is that my point. So I don't mean to say what I said that, you know, the CAP said it failed. So what happened with, it could be that management implemented it at that time and then it fell off the wheel. I mean, all sorts of things happen. So, so I need to, you know, correct what I personally said as well. But I would like to go ahead and open it up to the trustees if they have any other questions. That's all I have.
Okay, no, thank you. We intend to bring it back.
Yeah.
With management's responses and perform further testing.
And
in the
evidence,
future.
yeah.
Yep.
I do have a question.
Okay, trustee Me.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, first of all, great job finding this. To be honest with you, I was a little bit shocked when I see that, because from my experience from my department, and I will assume changing someone's paycheck take a lot of steps through accounting, payroll, right? And then would require a lot of paperwork check, validated before approve changing someone's paycheck. But this isn't like that's what happened here. I'm thinking maybe two things fell, like you say, the processing, maybe we didn't have a well process and policy that really well communicate with the staff that like implemented this change of paycheck. And then the other percentages, maybe policies there, the staff failed to follow the policies, failed to check the documents, the approval before they implement it. So either way, I feel like this is very critical things to look into. And then report back is great. And the other thing I want to point out is that on the page 229, right, on the bottom here, the recommendation to management, number 2 here, I see that if you read the number 2, it make it sound like take action to remediate unauthorized bonus and collect any associated payment. The wording used there is or
not end. So my question is that, is it some of them you don't need to correct it? You know, I assume all the unauthorized bonus and payments need to be corrected, but I see the wording here is or.
If they determine that management, is in agreement with those bonuses, I think that needs to be determined in compliance with the county code. But I think they need to determine that if those were valid bonuses, and they would approve of those bonuses. If there are any bonuses that the executive management would say we would not have approved that, I think that is a different. I'm not sure how they would address that, but action would need to be taken to collect the overpayment if those bonuses should not have been paid. Most of the bonuses, I don't want to, Mr. Lundy is here and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the bonuses were, not all of them, but most of them, I think maybe but most of them were approved initially. It's the continuation of them, the approval for their continuation. So when you talked about them getting added to the payroll, there was approval for their initially receiving the bonus. It's the continuation that we're not getting approval on in most cases.
So the management will look into different cases. If some of them would have been approved, then it's okay to not correct it. And then if they're not appropriate and wouldn't be approved, then it would be fixed.
That's right.
Thank you.
Mr. Moore?
Yeah, so I was here when the initial audit was done.
Yeah.
So it's been
good times.
Great. Yeah, but this is a great improvement over where we were a couple of years ago.
It is.
So my recommendation is you can look into this. When we have someone working out of class or in a different supervisorial position or temporary position, that it just be for a date certain and it terminates automatically. So that if it's going to continue, it has to be approved to get the extension. And then you don't have this issue of, oh, I forgot to submit something and request something, but I'm still getting paid, so no one worries about it. So that would, to me, be an easy fix. You're assigned temporarily for 1 year. At the end of the year, it terminates unless we extend it for another year.
Right, and I believe that is something that we, as the team that's looking at the policy, I recommended building into that policy. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe that's exactly how it should be, and hopefully that's how it's going to be remediated.
That's the only comment I have.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to, go ahead.
Move approval.
Second. Before we can continue.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you.
So a couple things, I'm not familiar with the SSB, but I know for sure that the ARB, the OCB, and bilingual code is all identified in the county code. So my first question is the bonus policy, does it adopt county code or does it provide a alteration or further restrictions to the ARB, the OCB, and the bilingual and whatnot?
I defer to staff to address that. If from my understanding, we follow the county code. There might be some LACERA interpretations of it, but I'll let Mrs. Toya answer that. Yeah.
Hi, sure. Good morning. Yes, it does adopt large portions of the county code. It adopts large portions of the interpretive manual, as it is our guide for applying payroll rules, and then portions of our MOUs.
County fiscal policy, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that's so my first thing is I got a couple more questions. Are all according to policy? I would like to request staff if you could provide us with the existing bonus policy to the board, to the committee. I would appreciate that. I know you guys are talking about changing it to accommodate for some of this stuff, but like Mr. Moore talked about, we got policy versus procedure. I think like the drop dead date you're talking about would be a procedure born out of that. And then are all LACERA employees available to these bonuses. Bilingual, I'm sure is, but the ARB out of class bonus is every LACERA employee, if they meet the criteria as identified in the county code, able to get any of these bonuses.
More or less. So there's some that are specific to MAP, they're not available to non-MAP, and some that are available to non-MAP, they're not available to MAP.
Gotcha. So
But
upper management has the
yeah.
MAP rules and whatnot, but outside of upper,
Yes.
I think MOU covered employees outside of MAP. And so that leads me to my other question. MOU language is some of these bonus structures identified in LACERA employee MOUs?
Yes.
Are they, okay, that's
So
great.
the ARB and OCB are specifically listed in there. Something like a soup sub is not specifically listed, but it's in the code, so it's applicable. Something like a bilingual is not specifically listed in the MOU, but it's in the code.
So
Yeah.
it applies to, okay. Yeah, that would be my ask. If you could email the existing bonus policy. I'm familiar with the codes, the county code regarding, and then the SSB, just for my own information, is that I haven't found that in the county code. Is that in the county code?
It is
Okay.
supervisor subordinate bonus.
Yeah, no wonder I didn't find it. I'm just kidding. Oh, that's where if a supervisor has to make a small percentage over, like if someone's bonus structure, it puts them up above their supervisor. Okay, I'm familiar with that. Threw me off with the acronym. Yeah, I would appreciate that. That would be awesome. If we could get the existing policy. I would appreciate that. I feel that all the entire committee would, without any objection, it would be good to look at since we're going to possibly change it. So.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the clarification.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Ready to vote? Yes. So Mr. Moore made the first motion, Mr. Green second. Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Ms. Durazo?
Aye.
Mr. Green?
Aye.
Ms. Me?
Aye.
Ms. Greensburg?
Yes.
Chair Martin? Yes, with report back. Okay, the motion passes unanimous by trustee present. Okay. Right, now we have, we're done, right? Other reports? Anything else? Reports?
I'm good with the reports.
Everybody good with the reports? That's consultant comments.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any consultant comments? Thank you. All right, so anything for the good of the order?
I want to say,
Yeah.
board, I just want to say thank you for staff, for this tremendous amount of work and with this change of the program. I really appreciate this. Thank you.
I just have a quick comment, and it basically is the same thing. I mean, the staff here does incredible work. This audit work is really good, Richard.
Oh, well, it's all
I
everybody
know
behind
it's
me.
a team,
that,
it's a village,
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
everything. But I mean,
They make me look good.
it's definitely 7-star, not 5-star, 7-star.
Oh, that's very, we appreciate those
All right.
comments. Yeah.
Okay, and nothing else, we'll adjourn. Thank you. I like to do this. Off.
Recording stopped.